Good evening. I'd like to call the meeting of the Cunningham Town Board to order. It's Monday, August 5th. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustees Brown.
Here.
Hazen. Hersey.
Here.
Jacobson.
Here.
Miller.
Here.
Roberts. Wu.
Here.
Mayor Marlin.
Here. Next up is minutes of the previous meeting, July 1st, 2019 public hearing, a July 8th joint meeting, and a July 15th joint meeting. Is there a motion for approval?
I'll move approval of the minutes.
I'll second.
Moved by Jared, seconded by Bill. Are there any corrections? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. That motion passes. Are there any additions to the agenda? Okay. Public participation. Does anyone wish to address the Cunningham Town Board? Seeing none. Next up is committee to verify bills. That's the Town Fund and General Assistance Fund. Danielle?
Good evening. So for the town fund, we have $93,000, $838.65. For the general assistance fund, we had $55,836.70. And that totals $95,775.35. And I have also provided the credit card statement, and I know that it covers a different time frame than the town bills. In the future, I'd like to just download the statement for the time period of the town bills, which will make it easier. But any questions about the bills? Go ahead.
Mary Alice?
Mine is more of a procedural question. So I noticed that there was some charges for an admin staff lunch meeting on this month's bills. I'm wondering if we have specific rules outlined in terms of when we will pay for lunch and when we will not.
I know that there's travel and accommodations. There's a specific process per diem, but I don't believe there's anything specific to luncheons. When I take my team out over lunch, because there's no other time for me to meet with them, I usually purchase lunch for them. So it's a rare occasion, but I took the admin team out and we talked about the future year. And I believe Wayne at times will take staff out, and if they're doing work, they will pay for lunch.
Okay, I guess I'm worried. This doesn't seem excessive. I just want to clarify that.
Nope, it's not.
But I know that there have been issues in other public bodies with paying for lunch for employees. So I'm wondering if maybe we should write down some guidelines in terms of when that is allowed. And I'd like to see something like that. I don't know if the board has other thoughts on that. I can request of the city if they have a template, or the other, or township, City of Champaign Township. That would be great.
Jared, comment?
I just imagine we need to establish a budget for it. If it's going to be, if we're okay with them spending some X amount on it, right? I mean, that's how I've always done it in other business working. This is X dollars for, this amount of lunches per year, and you blow it all in a month, and well, you're as well.
Eric?
Yeah, so I think a dollar amount would be reasonable. It's a different situation at the university. University, we only put meals on an account if there's a visitor, and we're taking that visitor out, but that would not pertain here. But I think it's reasonable for there to be some amount budgeted for it.
Just a quick question. Has this come up as the city council? Is it something that you all have a policy about, or you've legislated a policy or a specific budget?
It's a great question. It hasn't come up while I've been on council.
Okay.
Yeah, to my I do not remember it coming up previously.
Okay.
So
might be something to look for both bodies, since you serve in both capacities.
yes. One of many things that we may have overlooked and suddenly occurred to us since Mary Alice came on the council.
For folks' birthdays, for staff birthdays, we typically buy cupcakes or tamales if they're not into sugar, or, we patronize the downtown business. That's pretty standard.
Can I ask Diane, do you know if there's a city policy on when we pay for food?
It depends on the occasion. I know for example, when we pay for food for city council, it comes out of individual city council members' allocations.
That's nice to know.
We can get the copy of what we've got. I think each department, pardon, John?
As I recall, the best of my recollection is we would only pay for staff lunches when they're hosting a job candidate coming in from outside. As an example of a different way, we're talking about when we have a staff meeting, then basically, I don't know how other departments, I would assume it would be the same way I've paid for our staff when we have staff meetings. Or if we bring in food, we pay for that out of pocket.
Yeah, typically, if I take staff out to lunch, I pay for it. Or Carol
So
does the same.
Maybe it would be an opportunity for us to just kind of standardize that across
Okay.
both bodies. Yeah.
I do it.
Sharice?
I just, okay, but she's talking about that they're doing a working lunch, right, Danielle?
Correct.
So it's a working lunch,
Mhm.
and to me, that kind of changes things in the sense that labor rules, say that you can have this much time for lunch, but if that time is being taken up with a meeting, then I don't see why the staff would have to pay to eat and work. They're still
Correct.
working.
That's our opinion. That mirrors our
So-
We can go back and forth on this. I just think it would be good to have guidelines so everybody's clear in terms of when it's appropriate and when it's not appropriate. So I'm not saying
No,
it's not appropriate. I'm just saying it would be
Yeah.
nice to have it written down and to have some guidelines that,
And that's I understand that. It just seems that we were getting off into something else. Well, when we have guests, we do this, but the thing is she's talking about this is a working lunch. For all intents and purposes, they have, because it's their lunch, they could actually go someplace else and pay for it themselves and not show up for a meeting. You're enticing the people to be there, by saying, we'll pay for your lunch, please stay here so we can have a staff meeting or whatever it is. And so I don't see why, I would not expect people who legally have the right to have a break, a lunch break. I would not expect them to pay for lunch if in fact they're doing a working lunch.
Well, I'd say we'll start with what we've got in the city and let you look at that. Jared?
I'd like to move approval of the town fund and the general assistance fund.
I'll second.
Moved by Jared, second by Mary Alice. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That motion passes. Reports of officers.
So general assistance participants continues to bounce up and down. We're starting to see some regularity between 100 and 115. We are down to 104 this past month. You may recall last month we were at 113. We have 46 participants in the community workfare program. 58 of our participants are disabled, seeking SSI support. 31 are homeless. That tends to bump up and down, but it stays pretty close to that number. The good news is we have a new tracking system for housing stability. So we basically have folks coded as red, yellow, and green. Actually, it's red, orange, yellow, and green. So we have crisis, at risk, a high risk, unstably housed, low risk, unstably housed, and stably housed is green. So we are in the process of basically sorting every participant we've worked with into these categories, and I'm hoping to actually have even more robust statistic for the town board. Part of this is our campaign is to move everyone into stable housing with available resources, and we can't do that unless we can track where folks are at. But for now, we have the homeless stats. I have broken down, we have more fine-grained information about ages. In the past, I've just given Average ages, you can now see ranges of ages. For rental assistance, we serve 14 households. That was the same as last month. We have launched a countywide rental assistance program, and we're seeing an increase, but it's not a dramatic increase, but basically from about 8 to 9 each month to that 14 range, which is still within what we budgeted for the year. I do want to invite the town board members and members of the public to our next garden celebration. It'll be this Wednesday, August 7th, from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. It is a partnership with the City of Urbana's Public Arts Program, as well as the Urbana-Champaign Independent Media Center, which they together have launched this project, Open Scene, and their next open mic will be in the garden. We'll highlight Emily McCowan, who was actually our garden intern last year and responsible for much of the infrastructure. And she's really interested in, she wants to kind of focus on our collective empowerment and healing in the face of trauma. So we're inviting folks to share stories, songs, poetry, performance. You can show up and sign up that evening. And we will have food there. We received a discount from Piatto's Catering, and we appreciate their contribution. So they're basically giving us at-cost food on Wednesday night. Any questions?
Okay. Thank you, Danielle.
Sure.
We don't have unfinished business listed under new business. Ordinance number T 2019-08-002, transfer of appropriation ordinance, Cunningham Township budget.
So essentially, each year we have a transfer of appropriation ordinance to balance out the budget from the year before. What you'll see is essentially in places where we went over, we've made some transfers. In places where we went under, we transferred to. We are limited to 10% of transfers. We were able to keep under that cap. I think the most significant over budget was our legal expenses, because we simply didn't know exactly when the Carl case was going to go to trial. It was expensive because going to trial is expensive, and so a lot of the monies are transferred to the legal fund from other places we were under budget. Overall, we were under budget for the year, so that's good news. Just slightly, we were close to, but under budget, and I'm asking for authorization to make these transfers based on last year's budget.
Do we have a motion to get this on the table and then discussion?
I move approval of the transfers as described within the document.
Okay, we'll move by Eric, seconded by Jared. Okay, questions? Mary Alice?
So looking over this, some of this is really small, 6 cents and so forth under different lines here. But two things kind of stood out for me. One was that there was a line item of $7,000 for building repairs and maintenance that wasn't spent this year. So I'm curious if there were certain projects that were put off. And was the reason for that being put off due to the concern for the budget?
So, yes and yes. When we saw our legal fees at the level that they were, we essentially, there were some optional items. We want to make some energy efficiency improvements and some improvements to our lobby. Essentially, we made no improvements except to meet with Scott Tess and meet with Ameren and have some energy efficiency kind of scope of works done. So we would understand, because our energy bills are still around $500 a month, which makes no sense at all. And so we're in the process. We'd like to, we fixed a few things. Our radiators were stuck open in the lobby, and that was a piece. And so we were able to fix those. But in terms of the big scale issues, we haven't. We did budget for those in this year, so we're hoping that we'll be able to get to those pieces with this budget year.
Okay, and can I ask my second question? Although it's more of a statement to the board, because I don't believe Wayne is here tonight, is he? So the other thing that was large in terms of the amount that we are changing, aside from the legal, that came a bit as a surprise was the travel and the training from the town fund and assessor. We had a really large conversation during the budget last year and this year regarding how much money we were going to allocate for training and travel, which we settled on temporary of $20,000 last year because of new employees that were coming on board. And we had that conversation again this year. And now we have an increase of $12,000. So that's a huge increase. So I just kind of wanted to draw that attention to the board, because if we're going to have these conversations about how much money we're allocating to these types of things, and then at the end of the year to balance the budget, we're getting like a 50% increase in that budget line, I think it's something to keep in mind. I'll certainly reach out to Wayne, since he's not here tonight, to ask him for clarification on that, but I just wanted to bring that to the board's attention.
Thank you. Eric, you had a comment?
A question, and then maybe followed by a comment. The question is, do you have an estimate for the improvements in energy efficiency? Do you have an estimate of the payback time? How quickly will that pay itself back?
I can pull that information. I don't have it in front of me. And actually, there's 4 assessments, and I think we've only done the first assessment. So essentially, we have to look at payback times with each of them and see what do we want to bite off in the first year.
Okay, so then my comment relative to that is, if the payback time is short enough, it might very well make sense to actually borrow the money to do that work and repay that out of the monthly savings.
Well, I don't think we would need to borrow. Well, we would. I put it in budget for some significant repairs to the township office, and I don't anticipate exceeding that budget. But if if we need to do that, I think larger contracts come to this board before we sign contracts.
Or we can even do an amendment to cover that, but it does seem as though that's something that the sooner it's done, the better it'll be.
Absolutely.
Bill?
Hey, you said that in the end we were had a net under budget. Do you have an amount for how much under we were total?
It was in the budget document that I provided. We had end of year numbers. I can see if I can pull those up, but we were, it was I think we were within about $15,000, $20,000 under. So we, we're careful not to exceed the budget for this last year.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Okay. All those, is this a roll call? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustees Brown,
Yes.
Hersey,
Yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Wu.
Yes.
That motion passes. Next up is Resolution T 2019-08-016R, resolution allowing the supervisor to open accounts with PayPal and Network for Good for the purpose of collecting charitable donations for the township.
So, also, Wayne was texting me. He says he's on the phone, but he can't be heard. I guess he was trying to respond to your question. It wasn't able to be heard. So, if there's a way to bring him on in terms of the tech, he could answer that question. In the meantime, I can go forward with this particular resolution. So, as you know, we budgeted for and have opened what we're calling the Angel Donor Fund. We had a number of groups and churches donate to the fund last year. 100% of that fund goes directly to support the material needs for our participant. There's no admin fee, nothing goes to paper clips or staff. We have been asked multiple times, is there a way that we can donate online to that fund? I've received both checks and cash. I really would prefer not to receive cash. Although, we've been able to deposit things appropriately, I would prefer that there be an online donation space. With our attorney's support, we've researched both PayPal and I also looked into Network for Good. And essentially, as long as we set it up so that the money sweeps, our preference is to have the money sweep that day into the bank account. So it's essentially a kind of transaction service more than it is a bank account. That said, because PayPal has a banking function, by statute, I'm required to come to you and ask to open up essentially bank collection spaces, both with PayPal and Network for Good, and then I'm still assessing if we're going to use both or just one of those. And I can certainly let you know where you can make donations and where the public can make donations once we get that set up.
Is there a motion? And then we'll have discussion.
I'll move approval of resolution number T-2019-08-016R, a resolution allowing the supervisor to open accounts with PayPal and Network for Good for the purpose of collecting charitable donations for the township. For approval.
Second that.
Moved by Jared, seconded by Eric. Any questions or comments? Bill?
What's the administrative fee that PayPal or Network for Good charges, do you know?
PayPal is terrible, and the smaller the donation, the bigger the fee, so it's actually not a percentage, it's like
A
a
minimum
certain.
plus.
Yeah, it's a certain set amount, and then there's a percentage on top of that. That's why I wanted to look at Network for Good. Their percentages are much lower. In fact, with other charities I work with, we tend to try to work towards Network for Good. It's just the question of whether or not their functionality will work for us. But I can certainly get that information, and that will basically be a primary reason as to whether or not we go with one or the other.
Okay, so it'd still be good if possible for people to write checks would be the better.
Absolutely. Checks are always better because we don't have those fees, but, honestly, there's a lot of young people I know who don't know what a checkbook is. And there are a lot of the people who are asking me if they can do it online.
Yeah.
Or swipe their Apple Pay or bring their phone in, and I'm like, sure, we'll take your money, I just have to work it out.
And is there any way to do Apple Pay directly with?
I can look into that. Right
it-
now, I've primarily people have asked, is there a way to link from the website, but I'm always looking for ways to save us on fees, so I will look into that.
Okay, thanks.
Mhm.
Any other questions? Okay, well, all those in favor, please say
There
aye.
should be a roll call on both of these remaining ones.
Roll call?
Yes.
Okay. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustee Brown,
Yes.
Hersey,
Yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
and Wu.
Yes.
That motion passes. Last resolution to consider is number T 2019-08-015R.
Wayne is trying to get through. I don't know if we try again here. Austin's trying to fix it. I don't know. Wayne?
Wayne?
I don't know if you're on mute, Wayne. He can hear us, but he can't seem to get through.
It seems,
Okay. Well, I think when he responds to the question, we will need to share it with the board, so everyone on the board has the information from Wayne.
So I think he heard it, but in case, I'll check in with him so that he can get it answered.
Just make sure he sends it out to the whole board.
Sure.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, Resolution 2019-08-015R, resolution regarding the release of closed session minutes for the period ending July 31st, 2019. And would the clerk walk us through this?
This is the twice-a-year resolution of releasing certain minutes or holding others in confidence. The only thing that's appropriate to release at this time is the review, the last joint meeting review of closed minutes from last January. The last meeting we had is still in preparation, and there are a couple of CDs that can be destroyed per the state's rules on 18-month retention of voice recordings.
So based on the Schedule A, B, C that is in front of the board, Schedule A is what they're voting on.
Schedule A is the minutes being released. Schedule B are those being held for in confidence, and Schedule C are those that have been approved that also, they've been approved, written copies exist, but we are entitled to destroy the voice recordings.
Okay, this motion focuses on Schedule A. Is that correct?
Yes, Schedule A holds Schedule B confidential and allows me to destroy the two recordings.
Okay, so it covers everything
Yeah,
on
it covers
here.
everything,
Gotcha.
yes.
All right, just wanted to clarify. Is there a motion? Mary Alice.
I'll move that we approve resolution number T 2019-08015R.
Second.
Moved by Mary Alice, seconded by Bill. Any further discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustees Brown,
Yes.
Hersey,
Yes.
Jacobson.
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
and Wu.
Yes.
That motion passes. We'll give Wayne one last chance. Wayne, are you there? Okay. We'll get the information to the board.
Yeah.
Okay, with no further business before the town board, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.